Hey everyone, welcome back to our third episode in our mini series with our partner Burtch Works. We had a lot of questions on our last little episode about this specific topic, so we are really excited to talk with Beverly again today around skill building tips and tricks. I'm going to go through a couple of slides first, and then we'll get into the good stuff. So the agenda, we're going to spend a few minutes talking about women in analytics and Burtch Works and who we are and what we do. We've got a presentation for you, and then along the way, if you have any questions geared towards anything Beverly is talking about, please throw those in the Q&A or the chat. I will do my best to monitor those. We'll take questions after each session or after each little piece, and then we'll also take some questions at the end as well. If you have never been to a Women in Analytics event before and aren't sure who we are, I'll share a little bit about us, and then I'll hand it over to the Burtch Works team. The mission of Women in Analytics is to increase visibility to women making an impact in the analytics space and provide a platform for women to lead the conversations around advancement of analytical research, development, and applications. We've been around since 2016 and are extremely excited to put things like this on, to help not only women build their careers and their skill sets, but everyone. And you can join our community. We've got an events calendar, a resource center, and so many other things to participate in on there as well. So I'll make sure to share a link in the chat for that. And then along the way, if you have any issues, please send those in the chat. I'll do my best to try to mitigate those for you. And then a recording of this presentation will be available within the standard membership platform after the event. Like I mentioned, if you have any questions for Beverly, the Burtch Works team, or me about WIA, please throw those in the chat and we will get to those throughout the presentation. And lastly, we will be holding a fourth episode of this series. That will be available exclusively to our standard members on the WIA community platform. So in the follow-up email to this, I'll make sure to provide some information about how you can access that as well as the recordings from the past sessions. Great, and I'm gonna hand it over to the Burtch Works team.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. I am Palmer Karsh, and I am the Director of Operations here at Burtch Works in Cincinnati. I'm going to kick us off by giving just a little brief overview of Burtch Works for those who haven't joined in the other parts of our series, and then I'll kick it off to Beverly. So if you are not familiar with Burtch Works, we are a data and analytics talent solutions firm, and we pride ourselves on being trusted advisors and career advocates to the community. We're known for our industry insights that we provide to the marketplace, which help both companies make good business decisions about who they're hiring, and then practitioners also navigate their careers as well. Our annual salary study that we've been producing for over 10 years focuses on 3 categories: data science, data engineering, and market research. So some of our findings from those salary studies are actually incorporated in this presentation, and they have been throughout the series. However, the final presentation that Kelsey touched on before, which is next week, we will uncover and do a deep dive into some of those findings. So really exciting. Our Director of Marketing, Millie Patel, has also joined as well if there are any questions as it pertains to those salary studies specifically. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to Beverly.
Hello, I'm Beverly Wright, and I'm the presenter today. I'm super excited to talk to you guys about how and why data scientists rule the corporate world, because we know they rule it. Let's see, do I have share screen ability? Yes, I do. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share screen. Kelsey, we looking good on the screen share?
Yep, we sure are, thank you.
Perfect. All right, so today, as part 3 of our series, we're going to talk about the skills needed to succeed. I get tons of questions about this, and I know as soon as this session is over, someone else is going to reach out to me and ask me these questions one-on-one. I'm going to be like, you should have come to my session, but thank goodness it's being recorded. So hopefully I can use that as a tool. I get this question all the time, and this is from those that are transitioning, as well as those that are brand new to analytics and data science, and even those that are in senior level positions in analytics and data science, and they're trying to not become a dinosaur. Like, they want to know, what do I do? How do I keep it going? People also ask me all the time, when's the last time you actually built a model? I'm happy to say the last time I built a model, guys, was August. It was not 10 years ago, it was August. Actually, I built several models in August. So it's important to keep your skills sharp in such a dynamic field. So before we get into that, I get so excited. Talking about the skills, tips, and tricks. Cheap plug, I'm shamelessly plugging the 2023 Data Connect conference. Get your ticket now at the Women in Analytics website. Our agenda, we're going to talk about the core skills, some of the dynamic types of skills and capabilities, and then some final thoughts about how you can achieve these. Woo-hoo! A little bit about me. I've been in analytics and data science since 1991. I was so lucky to find that decision sciences was offered at Georgia State University in the late 80s, and I stumbled across that class, and I was like, oh my God, this is my thing. So it's always been about discoveries for me. I think it always will be about making those discoveries with data for me, and that's just kind of what gets me moving. Aside from Burtch Works, I do wear a couple of other hats. I'm an adjunct, if you will, instructor for continuing and professional and executive education at University of Georgia about 3 times a year, and at Emory University about 2 or 3 times a year on Saturdays. I'm also the chair for the Analytics Society at INFORMS, the Institute for Operations Research Management Science, which offers the Certified Analytics Professional designation, among other things. And I'm the chair of the Analytics Society at Technology Association of Georgia, where I run the For Good initiative that leverages volunteer data scientists for community betterment to reduce things like homelessness, opioid addiction, human trafficking, all very bad things, and help vulnerable populations like veterans and children, foster orphans, the homeless, people like that. I also am the host for a podcast called Tag Data Talk, so check it out. All right, first I want to talk about data science attributes. Just if we're thinking about an analytics and data science professional, and when I say analytics, I'm sort of talking about the full spectrum according to Gartner, which kind of goes from descriptive up to prescriptive. If you're not familiar with the analytics maturity curve by Gartner, and it is easily findable, and it sort of outlines the different buckets, if you will, from the simplest to the most complex that add the most value. So I'm sort of thinking about the full picture. I will say that from my experience working in industry and academia and consulting, the bulk of what I think about is the predictive modeling data science type of work. So what does that person look like? Well, the roles in data are many. We have those that are in data, which usually they're under a CDO or possibly a CTO. There's information technology, and then data engineering is sort of straddling a little between the two, the idea of the data and the IT and the data science, where the modeling happens. So when I'm thinking about analytics, I'm usually referring to the BI, data science, and above, machine learning, AI, and even optimization. How do you get to this? This is what we typically see in data science professionals. You'll find different varieties of these 3 bubbles online. This is the one that I think says it probably the best. So to give you a walkthrough of this, there are 3, and these are not drawn to scale, of course. These are the same exact size, but that's not reality. But there are 3 main types of skills. One is computer skills, being able to apply different tools in a way that solves problems. And I'm sort of, calling these hacking skills. I adopted this from another place. So the hacking skills are just the ability to use the tool in a way to help solve problems. Very good. The other is, let's creep into the black box. Let's understand what's going on algorithmically. And that's our math and statistical knowledge. And I'm going to ask you guys a question. Kelsey, can they come off mute if they want to, or do they just need to type it in the chat?
Type it in the chat, please.
Okay, so I'm about to ask you guys a question. So put on your thinking cap real quick. So we've got the two types that we've talked about so far. Hacking being the ability to use tools. The second bubble being math and stats. And then the third is the subject matter expertise. I've done a lot of work in the financial services industry, so this would be like understanding regulation and understanding how customers engage with their banks and understanding accounts, things like that. Or in the nonprofit space where I do work there, understanding some of that. So that subject matter expertise is a third bubble. So my question for you guys is, and I guess you can put it in the chat, and Kelsey, if you can help me kind of read off some of these. Which skill, I need two answers. Which skill do you think was sort of the OG of data science? And of these three, which skill do you think is the current sought after thing in data science? So one of these bubbles has shrunken and the other one has expanded. Which one has shrunken? That was one of the first knowledge needs for data science, and which one has kind of grown? Kelsey, what we got?
Yeah, we've got lots of things coming in. So OG math and statistics, another math and statistics for OG, current hacking.
You guys
another
are
one of
good.
those.
This is a good group.
Yeah, everyone's coming to, I think,
this is a good group.
Common consensus.
Awesome. That is accurate. It used to be that if you had the math and stats, you were like in like Flynn. That was the thing. Is if you can understand how to build models basically from an algorithm from scratch. Right now, I know uphill both ways in the snow with no shoes. I had to build models from scratch. I'm actually really, really thankful for that, because I don't think you fully understand model building until you've built them from scratch. That's why even up until last year, I would have my students do standard deviation by hand, because they didn't understand what they were standardly deviating from. They didn't understand what it meant to have a standard deviation, because they would just punch it in their calculator. But if you make them do it by hand, they're like, now I understand what the word standard means and the word deviation. Now I get it. So that math and stats knowledge is where we started. And that was the building models by hand, so to speak, or writing code that mimics your algorithm. Now we have so much work to do, guys. We have so much work to do that the math and stats people have sort of shrunk in a way, if you will. And they're the ones that are helping us to form these boxes that are implemented into the computer tools. And then the tools are what, if we can leverage those tools, then we have to sort of trust that the models that are inside of it are working well. So that has shrunk in, and the hacking skills have sort of taken over. When you have the hacking skills, the math and stats, and subject matter expertise, that's the golden recipe for data science. Also note that if you are a hacker and you know the business, but you have no clue about what's in the black box, that's what we call the danger zone. I see this happening a little too often. So without having a firm understanding of math and stats, it can be a little dangerous. Some of the other top attributes, quant, just to be able to think in a quantitative way. Think about conversations that you have with artists, right? I have some friends who are athletes and then other friends that are like artistic, and having conversations with them are very different than kind of my people, you know, the quant people. And so just being able to think in a very methodical, like kind of structured way is a very good attribute. We're going to talk more about some of these, but curiosity is the one that I hear over and over again from managers, is that they don't want someone that's just waiting to be told what kind of analysis to do. They want someone that's really curious and sort of thirsty about the data. They're just like, gosh, I wonder what would happen if this. I wonder if we could solve this problem this way. And that curiosity makes for an excellent data scientist. That's a tough thing to teach. And I have to tell you, y'all, I was in the academic world for 21 years. I still have a toe in it because I teach exec ed at UGA. And I found that you really can't, I have not found a way to teach curiosity. I can stimulate curiosity. I can pull it out of people, but it's tough to teach that sort of thing. So there is a little bit of a, you know, kind of an inkling toward a great data scientist that's maybe built into their personality. Cool. Okay, so how do we develop these sort of core skills? There's a set of skills that are just core. You know, I was having a conversation with one of our clients 2 days ago, and he said, we have these people that are internal that are interested in this job, and then we have these other people that Burtch Works has sent us that are interested in this job. These people really understand like model building. They understand analytics, they understand data, like they understand all that. And then these people don't, but they understand our company. And so my question was, well, which would you rather teach them? And he said, oh my gosh, I'd rather them know the analytics and data science. Those are kind of the core, that's the hard stuff. I can teach them about the business, you know, whereas these other people with the business, if they don't have the core analytics, data science stuff, it's going to be tough, right? So this is the core side of it, the real heart of what we're trying to instill in a data scientist. Where do we develop that? Now, some of y'all want to fight me on this, that's fine, but I'm just telling you the reality. This is real talk with Dr. Beverly Wright. Core skills come from oftentimes education, y'all. There's really two places, education, certification. And education is so much easier to get now than it used to be. And there's a program, you know, as an example, I serve on the board at Georgia Tech. There's a program at Georgia Tech that's like $10K, and you can get it done in a year. You can even do an online version to get a Master of Science in Analytics from a great school. I think it's 10K. I might be wrong about that exact pricing, but it used to be 10K. Then there are lots of doctoral programs out there too. Now you have to kind of put your life on pause while you're getting a doctorate usually, but as an example, Kennesaw State University, they have a doctorate in data science. Like you're starting to see that. You know, it used to be you had to go into an IT or engineering or, you know, some kind of degree that was close. And now you can get an actual degree in analytics or data science, which is awesome. In general, and Millie, I may ask you for some help on interpreting some of this stuff here, but in general, according to the Burtch Works salary report that we just finished, data scientists that are at the master's level as an individual contributor, that's what this IC means here, individual contributor at level 1, they typically make around 90K, and then the PhDs make about 20K more than that. I know we're talking about skills, not salary today. We're going to talk more about salary in number 4 of our 4-part series. But as far as the skills, there's almost an immediate payoff from having a PhD versus a master's, and there's definitely a payoff of having a master's over a bachelor's. Millie, did you have anything you wanted to add or any color to that?
Nope, I think you
So far?
covered everything perfectly.
Cool. And y'all can put stuff in the chat too if you want about that. Now, this is the one that I think is really interesting. It used to be like, oh, PhD, wow. And now I have my people, my friends that are here with me, which is great because I used to be the only PhD in the room. But nowadays, if you have a data scientist, if you have a bunch of data scientists in a room, probably 12% of them have PhDs, which is phenomenally great because of the general pop, it's a lot lower than 12%. I don't know the exact number on that, but it's probably 2% or 1%, I would imagine. And then if you look at AI professionals, about 40% of them have a PhD. So a big difference when you're looking at PhDs. That doesn't, I'm not telling you have to go get a PhD. I'm just telling you if you are in the AI profession, then developing that core skill via a PhD is helpful. And some of the areas of study, the one that I wish was on here, this is also from the Burtch Works salary report. The one that I really wish was on here is actually analytics and data science. But since that's a relatively new major, we're even starting to see it at the undergrad levels. I think Emory has one of the first undergrads that are actually in data science. And I know they have a quantum department, quantitative theory and methods. So it's even coming down to the undergrad level. But you're seeing majors or the concentrations now, I guess is what they call them, being from analytics and data science. But typically, we're still getting a good showing of math and stats, which is encouraging. A lot of business and several engineering, especially in the AI side, they're more engineering oriented. Computer science, and because of that change in the bubbles, you remember the math stats going down and sort of the hacking going up, I think we'll see more of the computer science development here. The second big path for developing core skills is through certification. Now, there are certain kinds of certification that you can get. Typically, they fall into 3 buckets. You can get certified by method or technique, by knowledge, or by tool. So as an example, a method or technique would say, I'm a certified NLP, natural language processing, natural language generation, NLP, NLG. I'm a certified NLP expert, you know, for example. That's, or I'm certified in computer vision. That's great. It only says you know that one thing, which again, if that's how you've chosen your career and passed it out and that's your specialization, that's great. You can also get certified by tool. So if you get certified by like Python, you know, or on the BI space, there's something called a Tableau Zen Master, you know, and I know a Zen Master, Mark Jackson at Piedmont Healthcare, like he's a Zen Master, and Nelson Davis is a Zen Master. Like there are only so many in the country. It's you can't work your way into it until you have to get nominated for it and then elected. So that's another thing, but it only shows that you're like really good with that tool, right? And I think there's a Python certification too. So that's great. That's also great. Again, if you're trying to really brag about like that tool. The third type of certification is knowledge-based. And the knowledge-based certifications are ones that show I know the concepts. And as much as they can, they try to show that you've applied the concepts. Now, these are really appealing because they span beyond tools and they include many different techniques usually. So those are also desirable. Now, none of these are like necessarily better than the others. I happen to have the Certified Analytics Professional, the CAP at the end of my name, which is a specific designation through Informs. That was my specific one that I wanted to choose. If you want to learn more about certifications and which ones are right for you, please listen to Polly Mitchell-Guthrie. She's incredible, heavily involved in the analytics community, and she used to be on the board at the Analytics Certification Board at Informs, and she's used to work for SAS, and they offered several certifications as well, and now I think she works in healthcare, which is where her passion is. She wants to be able to help people with data science in a medical kind of way. So take a listen. You'll have to do a little searching because the Analytics Buzz was my freshman, my first podcast that I did when I was at Georgia Tech. So you'll have to do a little digging, but I think you'll find that very interesting. It's only about 20 minutes too. Cool. Okay, so core skills, education, certification. Try to fight me on it, but it's hard. It's really tough to learn those things on the job, or like you can learn them on your own, but then you can't, it's hard to show it to people that you knew them on your own. So even if you learn it on your own, then you can go get a certification and kind of use that as a way of validating and saying like, I got these, right? So the next section, I want to talk about dynamic, but I wanted to pause for a second and see what kind of questions we might have.
Yeah, so we have a couple. One of them, if I'm reading this correctly, basically is somebody who maybe doesn't necessarily have access to obtaining their master's or a PhD. So how would you go about, selecting a course or a program, based on maybe not having access to getting a master's or furthering education bachelor's degree? Like, how do you decide what courses you should be taking?
So if I understand the question correctly, there are choices about the school that you choose, and there are choices about the classes that you take within a program. So are they asking how do you go about choosing a program or a school? Or are they asking which individual classes to take?
I'll read it verbatim. So this
Okay.
person is from Mexico, and there are some programs oriented to being a data scientist, but not with a master's or a PhD, mostly just individual courses. How do we know what courses to choose?
Okay. So I would borrow. I would borrow from some really good programs. As an example, North Carolina State University is a real interesting model. They actually are one of the first that offered something like an MSA, and theirs was really interesting. Like you basically lived on the school, like you lived on campus, and there was no like single instructor. Obviously, there has to be an instructor of record to designate the score, the assessment, the grade, but it was a unique kind of model. So I would check some of those, like the NCSU program and Georgia Tech, as you know, there are plenty of them that look for some of the top Master of Science Analytics programs and see which courses, because they will usually list out the whole program. Like you have to have this, and this, and you have to have X number of credits. So if I were having to assemble a program from scratch on my own, then I would just kind of copy some of the options that are out there.
That's great. Thank you. We do have a few more. Where do boot camp style educations compare to these like certifications or traditional education routes?
Yeah. I mean, the boot camps are good, but they're less, what's the word I'm looking for? They're not enduring. That's what I'm looking for. They're not enduring. A boot camp will say, I learned this on this date, and that's it. So 5 years from now, it may not even be that relevant. Whereas a certification, you have required, what are they called? Is it called CEU? Continuing Education Units. Yeah. So with a certification, you lose your certifications if you don't, if you think about project management certification or Six Sigma Black Belt or Certified Analytics Professional, you have to show that you're continuously, learning. And so certifications hold a little bit more power and enduring validity because of the requirement being stronger.
Awesome. Thank you. I have one more that kind of pertains to this section. So this person has a master's in electrical engineering and also was in education for a while. They're now on a career break and are looking to restart their career in the data analytics field. Do you recommend to start with a certification, or do you think that they like the best route would be to go just directly to a master's program?
I think if they have the ability to get a master's, it's going to do really well for them. So if you can do a master's, definitely do a master's. If you need to start working right away and you just got to get going, then at least get a certification and potentially work toward a master's if you can.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Sorry, I'm just searching through this chat here to see if I missed anything.
Well, and I'll go ahead to the dynamic kind of skills, and then we'll talk about personality attributes. So if we can pick up more later, that'd be great. Thanks, Kelsey, for covering those. Okay, cool. So that's the core skills. Now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the dynamic skills. And by dynamic, I sort of mean like, what are the skills right now? You know, because the skills of 10 years ago, you know, and there are certain skills that are core, and then there are other skills that are like, well, right now, this is what's hot. And I know some of y'all are probably not, I'm really aging myself here, but you're probably not familiar that we used to say big data, which is so embarrassing now. Like it used to be called big data this and big data that. And we don't do that now. So, or not usually. So there are some trends that sort of, you know, come and maybe don't stick. And right now, some of these things that I've listed are what's hot. So number one, I'm going to go through the punch list real quick. Data management, right? And the reason I listed this as a, you know, kind of dynamic is because it's just going to be assumed. I mean, y'all, to put it in perspective, again, aging myself big time here, but this is so embarrassing. I actually took a typing class in high school. Will's High School. Can you imagine a typing class? Like, obviously, you got to be able to type. But back then, it was like, I got to learn how to type. And today, it's like I have to make sure and tell people, like, dude, you got to know SQL. Like, you got to know SQL. You got to know how to clean data. You got to know relational databases. You got to. Even if you're not in data engineering, if you're in analytics and data science, you still have to know SQL, right? Now, in 5 years, that's going to be so assumed the same way typing. Like, that's like saying, I know typing. Like, okay, well, no kidding. So anyway, that's still a big talking point, is you got to know SQL. Programming, Python right now is kind of the hottest programming language that we are looking for, or that hiring managers tell me that they're looking for. And you should probably know at least one other language tangentially well. I'm not sure if that's even a word, but you should have a secondary that, even if you can't necessarily, you know, be an expert in it, but you should at least be able to read it. As a professor, and I taught the practicum, like end of the master's program, like they can use whatever tool they wanted. And so I had to learn how to read like MATLAB, R, Python, SAS, like they get pretty similar. So being able to at least read one other language aside from Python is kind of the trend. And then thirdly, again, I'm sort of listing this one because it's sort of like that typing example. It's going to be assumed. But I think we're starting to realize, oh man, our progress from a technology and capability standpoint seems to be outpacing ethics. And so there's this sort of dance between like, oh man, we want to do a lot of stuff with data science and analytics, but we also have to realize that there's an ethical component to all of this. And you have to also realize, this is a quote from Box. Y'all have heard of box plots. It's not called a box plot because it looks like a box. It's because the guy's name was literally Box. But he says, all models are wrong and some are useful. True. So we start realizing that there's a major ethical component. And now I think right now, that's some of the things that hiring managers are really looking for, is the skill of being able to have the integrity of model building. The fourth one is business acumen. The schools are not really, we schools are just now sort of realizing, oh man, we got to instill soft skills too. It can't just be like we're producing all these model builders and these quants and these heavy technical people. We have to produce people that know how to frame problems and speak to executives and know their language and understand their perspective and have some empathy for the business. So business acumen is kind of a skill du jour. Again, I sort of think it's going to fade in a way because it'll just be like, well, of course you have to have business acumen. Hacky, we talked about that one a little bit, like adapt well to new tools. There's a sort of a movement toward, you just got to be able to take on whatever tools. You can't go in and be like, oh, I only know X, and that's all I'm going to ever do. You got to be dynamic with your schools. And then another last that I'll mention skill that I'm seeing hiring managers say like, gosh, I really want someone that can blah, blah, blah. That's sort of a du jour is advocacy. Because data science and analytics is not like as old as math, or psychology even. Like it's not that old of a profession. So we are still needing to advocate on behalf. We still have to champion. A great model is not enough. We have to go beyond a great model. We have to advocate for our profession and for the field. So hiring managers are generally, from what I'm hearing, they're looking for people that can champion the cause to elevate data science across an organization. Okay, non-quant skills. So we covered kind of the core, and we covered the sort of du jour, like fluid, like dynamic. These are skills that are sort of today. They may not be in the future, but they're sort of today because of our current environment. And now I want to tell you a little bit about the non-quant skills. So I was reviewing these slides with Millie, and we were sort of joking. And I'm like, Millie, you're like this marketing genius, and y'all are like, y'all marketing people. I have a daughter that's in marketing. I'm like, y'all are creative and stuff, and you know how to communicate. So some of this stuff sort of comes naturally and organically for different types of people. But with us analytic types, sort of data science mindset, these are sometimes our hardest things. There's a dear friend, actually I think I have a picture of him. He was hanging out with one of my other dear friends the other day, and they sent me a selfie, and it's Wes Char and Nick Vasiloglu. And Nick Vasiloglu was my number one when I was at Relational AI. Super smart guy. We call him the Greek geek of Atlanta. And he told me one time that the only class he ever failed was general business. Like, dude, you're one of the smartest people I know. How do you fail general business? It's because it's the heavy duty quants have sometimes a hard time with sort of the squishy stuff. So these are the squishy things, if you will, that they're really sought after, really valued. So this is kind of a long list. I'm going to sort of punch through. I think it's 9. So number 1, we got to be able to create value. Now, I love just sitting around and creating models, right? And sometimes I used to, especially back in the day, create like model after model after model. I had analysis paralysis. I wanted my model to be a brick house. The diagnostics were never good enough. I wanted it to be better. And so I iterate. But good analytics professionals have to have the skill of knowing how this is going to be applied. Like, how can this value the business problem? Like, how can this create some kind of benefit, right? And so you got to keep your eye on that. You got to elongate your vision to that prize, that it's going to add value. That's a really good skill. Secondly, I was talking to one of my mentees about this, and she was like, well, I don't want to do this, and I don't want to do that, and I don't want to do this. And I'm like, come on, this is a dynamic field, man. You gotta be a little flexible and adaptable when you're talking about some new capability that your company is bringing on. So it's great if you can do the analytics project or programs or products that you're developing, if you can do them exactly the way you want. But flexibility and adaptability are a really good thing in analytics. Number 3, innovation and creativity. Again, dynamic field. A lot of this has to do with the fact that we are still a relatively juvenile field and that we are, moving quickly. So getting creative and innovating, now, a lot of times Occam's razor holds true. Like, the simplest solution is usually the best. So don't over-engineer a model just to be cool. You know, don't build like a neural net when you could just answer the question with simple descriptives or something. But also sometimes you have to think outside of the box of how you've done the analyses before. And so use some creativity and some innovation. The most innovative, creative things that I've seen have been as simple as pulling an outside data set and augmenting that to your existing one and then combining for a new metric. So sometimes you have to think outside the box. Learning. This kind of gets to that certification idea that continuously learning so that you don't become a dinosaur. Think about the projects that you've done and the products that you've built in analytics and data science and continuously try to learn. There are tons of opportunities for open source videos like Andrew NG. His last name is Ng, but it's spelled letter N, letter G, Andrew NG. He's got a great voice and he's really entertaining. So there's books, there's podcasts like Tag Data Talk that I mentioned earlier. There's all kinds of ways that you can continuously learn in this field. That is a great skill. Perspective. So there's a podcast interview with, what's his name? Colin Coleman that you can find on Tag Data Talk. And it's entitled like having empathy or something like that. It has the word empathy in it. And if you can understand the perspective of the business partner you're working with that is wanting analytics and data science, then you're going to do way better, much more better serving that person. So I know we're getting short on time, Kelsey, but let me give a quick story and then I'll speed through. When I was at like different places, but I'm gonna give you a nonprofit example because I think y'all find this cool. I was doing some work for Davis Direction Foundation, which is this kid named Davis passed away at 17. He's like valedictorian, great kid, was going to Georgia Tech, best friends with Darren Waller, who's a NFL player, died of opioids, right? Terrible, tragic. So I was working with them with my nonprofit, and we're working on a data analysis for them and building this cool model to help them understand how they can do what they do better. And I said, guys, I really think we need to take a trip to Davis Direction Foundation and meet some of the people that are addicted to opioids. And that really put perspective behind the data. Like they were talking firsthand to people that had this addiction and were trying to overcome it. And that understanding the perspective, walking a mile in the shoes of the business people that were trying to help solve this problem makes the data seem completely different. So it sort of gives you that different kind of view. And that's a very desirable skill, is to be able to have that perspective. And then I think this is second to last is curiosity. I had a cat image on here, but it looks like we changed it. But just having that natural curiosity about what if we tried it this way and what if we answered it that way. One of my favorite bosses of all time was Sean Williams, and he was my boss when I was at SunTrust, which is now called Truist. And he called me so curious, you know, because I was looking at data and I would be like, oh, what happens if we look at it on the customer level versus the branch level? And oh, what if we pull this in? And well, what about that? And that natural curiosity to try to really solve the problem in a way that will benefit the business, that's an incredibly valuable skill and one that is difficult for us to sort of tease out of data scientists sometimes. And then lastly is storytelling. My great colleague, Bill Franks, has recently written a book about owning the room and the art of data storytelling. He's a fantastic colleague that has a really good perspective on this. So I highly recommend that you take a look at it. This notion of storytelling is really critical because you can get to the end of, you know, building a data science product and then not be able to communicate what it means and where it comes from, and just sort of, it doesn't get used. You know, you end up falling flat, even though you have a great model. There are lots of examples. If anybody wants, I can give you some. Just use the keyword monks and I'll remember. I can give you some examples in history where great things have happened and they weren't communicated effectively, whereas, you know, some things that were minor, but they were communicated better and it made a big impact. So you can always email me and I can talk to you more about some of those examples. Oh, I'm going to skip these two, but these are reinforcing the storyteller. All right, I know we're 2 minutes over, so I'm going to punch list through these 3 big categories. So a few tips about building some of these skills. Number 1, present yourself. There are many opportunities to present yourself. I talked to someone yesterday. Oh, I didn't even put it on here. I talked to someone yesterday and he said, gosh, I work for this company and I love it, but I'm all by myself. Like, I don't have colleagues. I feel isolated, and post-COVID, it's getting really depressing. And so I said, well, go to a meetup. And so meetup.com, or you can do the app. And there are plenty of places to find like-minded data science analytics colleagues, probably in your area. But present yourself, either present yourself at a meetup, or I just did a publication about how to build a data science community. It was actually a data science for good community. It's not in print yet, I don't think, but I'll send it as a follow-up if it is in print. You can also be a podcast guest. You could present yourself at conferences. You could do a LinkedIn Learning or participate in a LinkedIn Learning. You can build a GitHub and share that. So there are lots of ways that you can present yourself. One of the best ways to learn, are y'all listening? This is interesting. One of the best ways to learn is to teach others. If you teach others, you learn better than if you just try to learn on your own. The second is get some hands-on experience. If you don't feel like you're getting the hands-on experience through your employer, go get your own hands-on experience. You can do this through publicly available hackathons. I'm working with Technology Association of Georgia right now. They're trying to stand up something called Master Modeler Competition, which is a hackathon. There's skills-based volunteering. You can work with a nonprofit and ask if you can help them answer some questions with their data. Don't go to American Red Cross or some giant place that has like a bazillion data scientists. But if you pick a local nonprofit, then I think that will give you the ability to help them answer questions. And then the third big bucket is make sure you fill your core needs. Like if you don't have, like, education is table stakes. I think one of the stats we had earlier was 90, what was it, Millie? Do you remember? It was 93 or 98% have at least a bachelor's or something, or have it, I can't remember what it was, but it was a 90 something that have, maybe it was 90 something that have an advanced degree. 93 have an advanced degree, right? So it's tough to make it. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's really tough to make it in this field without some kind of advanced degree. So consider your education and your certifications as core needs. Here's some links to our salary report, as well as a Data Science for Good group, the podcast, Tag Data Talk, and Certified Analytics Professional if you're interested in that. It also, the CAP also has an ethics guide to it. If you don't already have a set of ethical standards that you've adhered to as a data science analytics professional, you can sort of take this one and borrow it. Next in our series will be a data science comp review. We're going to talk money, all about job levels and demographic segments and what we're seeing in some of the trends in this area. I know we're out of time, but I'm available for the next 9 minutes if there are additional questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Beverly. Yeah, I know we are out of time, but I would love an opportunity to at least try to navigate through some of these questions. So thank you. I have one on, are there any, I know that originally we talked about, just some basic skills that are relevant to now. One of them was in terms of programming languages, Python. You recommended also being fluent in a second one. Do you have any recommendations for second options that may be more relevant sooner than later?
I would say R. I mean, typically R is the language of choice for those with a stats background, and Python is a language of choice for those with a computer science but ours probably the second best.
Awesome, thank you. And then for any of the managers that are involved in this conversation today, how can they support kind of the education needs of their team members?
Yeah, I would strongly suggest that they partner with one of the schools near them. So for example, they need to look for it's typically called an analytics center or an analytics institute. I can give the equivalent at Georgia Tech, and there's probably, I'm sure, like most schools have something like this. At Georgia Tech, there's something called IDEAS, which is the Institute for Data Engineering and Sciences, IDEAS, Institute for Data Engineering and Sciences. And that's a provost level center that collaborates with businesses and academia. And so it's a way of sort of serving as a connecting point to professors and students. Hiring managers, if they can collaborate with these schools, a lot of times they can get like kind of bulk programs, you know, like I want to send 20 people through your MSA and I want to support, you know, this, that, and the other, or they can work with the continuing education to get like certificates. Those that are interested in a certificate, you know, as an example, they can reach out to schools like University of Georgia, and we do sometimes do those online. I'll actually put my contact at UGA if anyone's interested in continuing education that's not degree seeking. But for degrees, I would work with the local school in their area.
Awesome. And then we have time for one more, and I will also include this information in the follow-up email. But can you share the title and the author of the storytelling book that you referenced?
Yes, it's Bill Franks, and I think it's called Owning the Room or something. But I'll put it in the chat.
Awesome. Thanks so much to everyone who was able to join us today. We are officially exhausted of our time. So I do just want to reiterate, like Beverly mentioned, we have a fourth episode coming out next week. We will be hosting that exclusively through our standard membership platform. So if you are interested in hearing more about, salary options and what that looks like from a money perspective, I'll send some directions on how to sign up for that standard membership platform in the follow-up email. And we'll see you all next week.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Kelsey. Thanks, Beverly.
Have a great data set.